I want to welcome everybody to the May 23rd meeting of the Budget Finance Investment Committee. It's been a long time since we've been together, since it was last night or the night before. We don't have any minutes to approve, so we'll just jump right into the budget review. And we're going to do, before we get into the school system, we're going to do the Linebaugh Library. So I'll ask everybody to turn to page 37. And that's on tab 2. Welcome, how are you this evening?
I'm fine, thank you.
You would give your name for the record.
My name is Rita Shackler. I'm the director of the Rutherford County Library System.
I think we all know we're good for the record. Appreciate you being here.
Okay, the current budget for her is $1.6 million. And she requested, on behalf of the Linebaugh Library Board, $1,787,714. And we had a good meeting, a good discussion, and I'm recommending $1,007,000. And thank them for the great job they're doing for Rutherford County and all of its citizens.
Ms. Shackler, do you accept the merit recommendation?
I do.
And they were at $1,007,000 in 17, and we amended them down to 8 in 18
Well, that's where we had that
That's-
special contribution to the
to the technology center. Gotcha.
Technology center.
I got you. Okay.
We've completed that,
Yes.
that commitment.
Yes, and please mark your calendars for July 18th. You'll be getting an invitation, but at 10 a.m., it's a Wednesday morning. That will be the grand opening of the tech. We would love to have everybody there.
When is that?
July 18th at 10 a.m.
I get a sneak peek while it was still under construction, and it's just such an impressive facility.
Well, it's gorgeous.
It's amazing when
the
you see something.
furniture has been ordered, and it is. I've been assured it will be here.
So it's just amazing when you see something come from a design on a piece of paper to out of the ground.
Well, and when I
to
first
fruition.
went, it looked so small because,
Yeah.
you know, you just saw that footprint with the foundation. But when the walls went up, and they did such a beautiful job blending it with the surroundings, it looks really nice. So,
Well, I'll make a motion to approve. Have we had the motion?
No.
Okay, then I'll make a motion to approve the request as presented.
Thank you, Commissioner Shackler.
Second.
Commissioner Allen?
I do have a question.
Absolutely.
100,000 is a lot of that is, I'm sure, is going to be salary increases and that type thing. Is there something in there, a project that's going to be done, or a?
No, we really had to kind of get things down to the bare bones so we wouldn't ask for as much this year. One of our biggest problems at this point, we have just replaced 3 units of our Smyrna HVAC system at $12,000 a piece. And so we have another one fixing to go out. They have 13 of them. So we're looking at, and our unit at Linebaugh is even older. So a lot of that is maintenance cost on very aging buildings at this point.
We know all about things
Yes.
going
I'm sure
out
you
from
do.
a lot of different places around here. Okay,
We've just
thank
kind of hit a roadblock at this point. They've started going out.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, I need to say that I serve on the Linebaugh Library Board.
Yes, ma'am. We appreciate
And
your
I'd like to
service.
acknowledge that I serve on the Linebaugh Library Foundation.
Appreciate you doing that also. You got all your notes now?
Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you,
very much.
and thank you for accommodating our board meeting on Monday night and letting me come tonight. I appreciate it.
No problem. Appreciate you being here. All right, let's move, start on schools. Tab 13 will be the Central Cafeteria Fund Revenue and Expenditures. And for those watching on TV, we saw every bit of this last night along with the Health and Ed Committee and the school board. And so it's not like we're looking at this for the first time if any of this happens to move quickly. And again, it might not move quickly. We have Mr. Stanford, Mr. Odom. Whoever else wants to come up, Chairman, Mr. Spurlock, school board members, appreciate you all being here this evening.
I would be glad, since you heard it 24 hours here just to read the motion, or do you want to, I'll do whatever you want?
By all means, you just read the motion, and if anybody wants anything additional, we'll be at the, whatever the board wants, whatever the committee wants.
So this is, the first one is the centralized cafeteria budget, that's what we're looking at, isn't it? The motion that the board passed tonight is to approve the 2018-19 centralized cafeteria budget, Fund 143, with $18,585,000 in revenues, $19,981,155 in expenditures, and it uses $1,396,155 of fund balance to fund the cafeteria as presented.
Any questions on the cafeteria budget? Of course, this budget is kind of backwards than all the rest of them. We have a maximum we can keep in that, so we have to make sure it's not too much money.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Thank you, Commissioner Pete.
Second.
Commissioner Allen?
What happens if the fund balance you see is going to run higher than what
So
you're
you
supposed to?
probably not send you as much money, would be my
Or you can have to repay money. So we always come up with a plan to spend it when we're.
We have a motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Cafeteria budget passes. Education capital projects, revenue and expenditures, tab 14.
Of course, you got more information than last night.
Yeah. Actually, what we got last night is
Is it?
what I'm working off of, and I guess I should have mentioned that to you guys.
We have the y'all want to vote on the project list? Or just,
Tell me what you
Project
need.
list. We can do it the same way that they did. They did the project list, and then they did the,
You can probably read both motions,
Okay.
and we can do it all in one vote if there's not any objection.
Okay, be glad to do that. The first one is the capital projects for the 2018-19 school year, that's the list. And the recommended motion was to approve the 2018-19 capital projects list for Fund Number 177 as presented. And the second one would be, the recommended motion is to approve the 2018-19 capital project budget Fund 177 for $5,414,774 as presented.
Any questions? Mr. Odom?
motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Allen.
Second.
Commissioner Healy?
I noticed that we've got $1 million earmarked for school safety, improving school safety. And we hope to get some money from federal government
The
grants.
state.
State.
Is it state?
State.
Okay, state on top of that. Would it be matching dollars and we've already got our amount here, or this would
We're
be
not
just be
hearing that
grants on top
initially.
of the?
It's supposed to be grant, you apply for the grant based upon the survey of the 47 buildings.
And how much grant money could there be?
$1.2 million.
Could be up to $1.2 million.
Yeah.
So
Some of the projects that we have discussed internally, and until we go through this assessment, we won't know. But some of the projects that we have discussed internally, if we did a similar project in all of our schools, would cross that $2 million mark. So we wanted to go ahead and do something to have ourselves in position to move forward.
The state reviews it based upon the assessment. So you want to, when you complete your assessment, you kind of want to look at it and say, this is where they say you may need to add something to, so we want to align that grant request with the assessment, and it should be approved if we do that.
And I guess some of the factors that will determine what we do for safety are just simply unknown. For example, we don't know how much we're going to get in state grant money, but even then, we haven't quite determined exactly which of the safety projects are going to be
And it may vary by building.
Yes.
vary by building.
Yeah.
But we-
Age and what you
Yeah.
But at a minimum, we're starting the process of allocating and earmarking money for this and beginning to prioritize which projects so that this is a reasonable first step.
Any other questions or discussion on the capital projects list or budget? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Move on to the general fund general purpose school fund revenue.
Okay, I'm gonna jump ahead.
That's on
And
tab 11.
it's under tab 11. What we were presenting there, 4,414,774. But with an adjustment that we'll be making to the certified rate, revenue is now estimated at 4,422. No, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Sorry. I was on 177.
Yeah, Jeff hopes he has.
I already have, yes. So 372,685, 296 is what we had. We're just certified tax rate, give them about $98,000 more. Revenue would be estimated at $372,783. 462. 372,783,462.
One more time, Lisa. Slower.
372.
Here, I'm going to give this to you. It's on your front page. I'll jump ahead, give y'all
That's
these,
good.
because this will kind of give you the rest of the story.
We do get
Just adjust it a little bit.
So the revenue, 372,783, 462.
Or another teacher night.
And what we presented, which we're going to talk about later, because we've got this on the amendments that the school board did last night. Sorry. The school board presented a budget amendment, 1.5 million going to unassigned fund balance. So that's what I'm showing in the bottom part. So with the presentation last night, let's make sure I got the right number. Mark, make sure that number is right. 387-899-979. No, what they had in their budget.
That's what they presented last
No.
night. Still working on the
No.
15.
No, I see it here. 387-705-790 is what the appropriation is. I need to move that over. That'll look a little better. Anyway, y'all talk about revenue. I'm gonna get that sheet corrected.
I have a question. We've talked about the fact that we need to purchase land. Has land been budgeted for, the
No.
4 to 5 million? So
No, and really, y'all talked about that probably needs timing of things. When you look at that, they're not gonna have it in fund balance at this moment, to say.
right.
You know, if we want to borrow money, we will be doing it in August, just so that the mayor will be here when we do all that presentation. We meet end of June, and we don't meet again until August.
Right.
So in June, we need to have resolutions ready to borrow.
And I think you all are getting close to coming forward with some property, are you not?
We are.
Or at least an
And Architects looked
estimate.
at it, layouts and some things like that.
At least some estimates as far as.
You
just
guys out
kind
there
of
might
what
want to
you
be looking at maybe even moving it forward contingent upon meeting approvals and things like that, so we can have a placeholder in this borrowing and stuff, and that way we can do things all the way down the finish line. And if the geotech or something like that comes back, we can always pull the plug at the last minute, but we'd hate to decide 30 days after we've been in the bond market, we need another $4 or $5 million. So just a suggestion.
Wise suggestion.
Okay. Jeff, it was, so anyway, revenue is what we are looking at, so that number is right. 372, 783, 462.
That's the
So
revenue
then
side.
And then the expenditure side.
We want to vote on,
Pick up.
you got them separate. Do we need to vote on the revenue side? I
Well,
thought
we
we've already
really
voted
didn't.
on that.
We really don't have, we really vote on the appropriations each time.
But we've looked at this already. We just need to move on to expenditures, do
Yes.
we not?
Yes.
Yeah, well, the certified rate can change between now and even at the end of.
I'm about ready to give that to you too.
Oh, okay. Just a step ahead of you today, I guess, right?
So you want to stay on revenue, you want to move on to expenditures?
Well, I think you can move on to expenditures, but it really didn't change my number because I had this column over here in 350, this 515 did not move over. So at my end of my story, if you approve what you did, what they approved last night, 387, 705, 790, you move that over, ending fund balance would end up, it would be budgeted at 12,387,62, and that's a 3.2% fund balance on that appropriation. Make sure that's right. That's right.
Looks like you're not done. Do we need to move?
No, I'm done.
Okay. I
I'm
thought
just
there was
done.
something else coming.
No, I just want to get that sheet right.
We'll move over. Any more questions on the revenue? Because we can come back at any time. We'll move to tab 12 and also the documentation from last night, general purpose school fund expenditures. Unless Mr. Odom, is there even a recommended motion? I don't think there was a recommended motion on that, so you ready to, we saw all that last night. We're ready to defend any line item at the moment's notice.
I got a couple of questions, and they're just clarification, really. I want to say one thing. I've been up here for a lot of y'all's budget, and this year, you gave it to us last Thursday night, what it was and all, and in the past, we've challenged some, and I didn't even read it till last night when Health and Ed started, because, there, and I started looking through, and I was happy with it then. But that's the first time I have not read it in days before we got together, but I just feel that y'all have shown your trustworthiness to us, and you're fair with us and honest with us, that we can do it that way. But my two questions, and this is something, you explained it last night, but anyhow, I want to know, the state retirement increase, I thought that the state had already set that when they came out with the hybrid plan and all this of how much the county was to pay. Is it going to be a step thing, or?
On the legacy plan and for our county rate that our classified staff also use, the state is now resetting that rate each year.
Okay.
Our
Depending where it
where
dropped or
in the
went up.
actuarial determination. So the legacy plan teacher rate went from 9.08, will go to 10.46.
And it could drop next year possibly.
Or go further up. The hybrid rate has stayed the same. And we have enough teachers now in the hybrid rate, because those are the teachers we started hiring in July of 2014 who were not already in TCRS. I was able to budget a savings of $500,000 against that total increase. We have that many teachers in the hybrid. And the hybrid plan rate is designed the way it was approved, that we should not be seeing an increase in that, was the way the state set it up.
One other thing to think about, as fewer and fewer people contribute to the legacy because they're now putting some in 401ks, there's absolutely the potential to request more the state to try to put that back. You get what I'm saying? Because where you had the legacy plan, one plan, everybody was putting their monies into that. Now this group of new people starting 14 are putting some in that and some in a 401k. So the potential is there. My economics fellow's nodding there.
It doesn't change the retirement pool, but it reduces the number feeding into.
Yeah, it does. And there's going to be an upward pressure on that rate by definition.
But as people die off, that will.
Right topic.
We're glad you said that.
It goes the other way. Okay, well, I still got couple more.
Okay.
One is that Tasser Fox index change that they came up with, and it was 1.3 1,300,000, okay? And that was due to the fact that they said Rutherford has a greater ability to pay. And now, so is that telling us that we're going to get reduced 1.3 million in growth funds, or is that all we're going to get in growth?
No.
You're gonna get more monies because you've got more students and all. What it's telling you is, when they take the budget, the BEP overall budget, and you start putting the pie slices for each district and that sort of thing, this ability to pay kicks in, which is your total assets within your county is one of the biggest factors. That's why I mentioned last night that, you know, as much as ours went up, has potential there also. So the pie slice, I guess, for us is a fraction less
Okay.
because of that ability to pay.
If we had taken last year's Tasker Fox index and applied it to this year's BEP allocation, we would have gotten 1.3 million more in state funds.
Kind of our estimate this.
Just two more.
Okay.
Okay. In the General Assembly this past year, there was a bill kicking around that they were going to set $20 million or something aside that for capital improvements in school systems based somehow on the sales tax you brought in or something. But I believe it got tabled fairly early in the system, and so there is nothing up there at this time. So that means at least 3 years in the future before anything like that can get approved, because they got to start and they got to kick it around for a couple of years. It seems like everything.
We get some capital monies. It's nowhere near a building. Jeff can tell you a little bit.
There is a capital component in the BEP. We have always used it for operations. Yeah.
It's not a big number.
No.
You-
No.
Last question.
Okay, 10 ready?
10 ready. What it's cost us, what it's cost the state, and is it going to continue to happen?
10 ready, the contract that the state had with Questar, which was the testing company, was $30 million per year over 2 years.
You know, is that the first one that they kicked out, or
No,
is that the
that's not,
second one?
no, that was Measurement Inc. That was
Okay.
a couple of years back, but the one now that's completing this fall, the contract, the last two, have been $30 million per year. I'm sure there are additional costs from that because there are people at the State Department of Education that are hired, their salaries, or other things, you know, to apply that. So what it would be, that 30 million plus whatever they're doing in their expenses to do that. They've made a change in, they're switching it over to ETS, Educational Testing Center, which is a major testing company. So the proposal is to take that Questar contract and break it apart. That the ETS people will create the questions, the test, and then if they approve Questar's contract again, Questar will actually give the test. I'm not sure ETS doesn't own Questar. I think this whole thing is kind of, there's some connection there, totally. But they thought if they split off the testing question and that part of it, it would let the Questar people that's doing the online assessments concentrate totally on making that happen. Locally, basically, we did not have a lot of additional costs. The biggest thing that we lost was instructional. I don't know how you put a dollar value on that.
Frustration
You as
on
a
a lot of
teacher,
people's part.
then that part bothered me. We spent roughly 4 weeks testing this year, trying to, and Ms. Ely knows, once you got the kids in the classroom, that lab, and you were doing that online test and it locked up, how long do you sit there? How long do you wait? So you stay a while, so you send them back to class a while. And they come back hour and a half, 2 hours, hey, it's running again. They ran into all sorts of problems with that because the way the system was designed, whatever laptop or machine that kid is using, their test for Don Odom was loaded on that computer, sitting there. So, and what made it very difficult in Rutherford County, we had more problems than some other counties in that until Don Odom finished with that computer, there was no way to put another kid on that computer because my tests were sitting on that. In the districts that had one-to-one and stuff, And it wasn't working if they could set that one aside and the other kid work on their computer, and it actually went a little better. So they didn't have as much, but all sorts of complex issues that seemed quite unusual to me, so,
Are there other states that test this way?
yes.
And so, are we reinventing the wheel? I mean, it's got to work other places.
Yeah, I actually read something about that, and this article talked about 2 states that seemed to have trouble and the others didn't have much. So, I don't know. You know, again, I wouldn't have necessarily the inside information in doing that, but online testing has been going on a long time. Now, if you go apply for a job in Rutherford County now, at a major company, I bet you they make you take your safety test online. Or you do. I mean, y'all do tests online and things too. But you have a magnitude here, you know, of students, 900-something thousand. Of course, some of that was paper and pencil also across the state of Tennessee. But everybody's hitting it about the same time too.
But I guess that's still my thinking is that if this has been successful in other places, why are we not being successful here? What is it we're doing differently or wrong or?
You would think so, would you?
Right. I mean, it seems like it should be
It's a
much more.
valid question.
Yeah, it should be much more straightforward than hacking and overloading systems. I mean, those are all things that should have been planned for. And I guess I'm just still confused why, you know, we're 4 years into it. It seems like, and
One of the most
Square one still.
One of the most encouraging things to me was, the legislature turned it over to the comptroller's office and said, survey teachers in schools and let them put their input in. Now, those people are auditors, and you know, you're dealing with auditors. So I completed a survey of problems, what it was, and our teachers, we encourage them. So it'll be interesting when that comptroller's office submits their report back to the legislature, because it'll probably be true for what happened across the state, and the frustration will be real obvious, I think.
I guess I'm just looking at it from an industry-wide approach. Education is industry, it's nationwide. We educate all over the country. And so if other states have figured out how to do this well, then why are we struggling so badly and not looking at those models and saying, that's what we need to do differently here? I mean, why are we having to do a survey and figure out what
we're
they didn't
wrong.
like about it? It's like, you know.
And I don't have direct knowledge of this, but again, background reading, that Utah and Tennessee does do more testing than any other state. I guess so that doesn't surprise me. And so they are cutting back some things, you know, next year. Some of the chemistry, there were so many tests in the junior year. They're backing off. They're also talking about reducing the number of questions on some elementary tests and things like that. So I know they're trying to be proactive into lessening that testing time, maybe doing some reduction in that, but only time will tell.
I know when we lost the first commissioner of education, for a little bit I thought to myself, well, he's just being a fall guy. This was a difficult rollout, difficult implementation. And now, you know, McQueen is facing the same challenges. So again, I'm like, there's something fundamentally wrong with what we're doing. And I don't know that it's the person at the top. Maybe it is. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out, why has this problem been so hard to solve?
The testing complexity is another thing. You know, one of the things that caused several crashes, they have what's called read aloud. A student that may be in special education with a certain handicapping condition, federal law would allow us, if it's indicated, that the text be read to that student. Well, that required immediate access. That wasn't downloaded, which was a question I asked. So when that started kicking in and everybody in the state were doing, they kind of told you what days to do it, English language arts, and it required read alouds. Hello, all of a sudden you had another whole mechanism in there trying to read to some students, not read to other students and all. And again, they said it wasn't bandwidth, but it was something went wrong. And they actually finally at the end says, forget the read aloud. If the student is due read aloud, then an educational assistant or a teacher needs to read to the student, just like the machine would be read. So they tried to make adjustments and all of that, but by then, it was really, people were so frustrated.
Right.
You can look at student scores. We got back what's called quick scores, which really doesn't mean anything. It's not proficiency. It's just how many questions you got correct out of how many were asked. And you can see students that were bright that just kind of shut down after a while.
Yeah, it just feels like it feels like a large amount of unnecessary stress. You know what I mean? It feels like
It's a lot of stress.
It feels like that it.
On teachers. and that's-
Right. That's what, no. This is exactly what I'm
Because
talking
they're-
about. There's a lot of unnecessary stress on the teachers to make this happen.
They-
And I'm the person who always encourages folks to contact their leadership, contact their legislators. I don't know what it is we need to say to them. I'm trying to figure out where does the answer lie.
I hope that the comptroller looks at this globally, not only in the problems and issues, but also looks at on the procurement side. And what did the contract promise and did not deliver? And was it something the contractor did not do, or was it beyond their hands truly? But again, I just think that report, when it comes out, may be very, very interesting. That it may turn over some of those stones.
And how quickly will that come out? I mean,
I'm not sure the date the legislature
Yeah.
gives. Usually it's a summer committee. So typically, with teachers leaving, they gave us a deadline, and that deadline's passed for people to go online and submit their suggestions, their issues, and that sort of stuff.
but I guess, and again, for me, this is just how my brain works. I'm very much a fan of lessons learned. Whenever I've done anything, I keep a file of lessons learned. And so that tells me the things that worked well, the things that didn't work well, and what we're going to do differently going forward, because you only ever want to look for solutions. And so that's, I guess, why I'm asking, when's the report going to come out? Is it going to come out in time for us to have some solutions implemented for next year? I mean, what's a realistic
hope
time?
so.
Yeah.
The other piece that the commissioner is doing in some of her testimony, we've had two people, Trey Duke and Mr. Wayne Blair, also served on that committee for his Tennessee School Board Association position, recommendations and discussion. So I get a little inside information with the discussion. So the commissioner is saying probably next year paper test all the way up through 8th grade and just online for the high school, which would certainly, she said, we need a phase-in. There's still a lot of people though would like to, because of the amount of paper. Honestly, with the number of tests, I'm not sure at a school like Siegel Middle where you were, or Blackman Middle, they're going to take a trailer truck to drive up there and give them the boxes they need. So some schools said, can you get it fixed where we can not have to take so much manpower hours at local level to sort these things? I'll tell you something, one of the most simple things, and you'd understand this, is it used to, when you had a textbook, like Don Odom's test booklet, page X to page Y was his math test. You give that. Then you would go to maybe his English test, the next page. When we received the tests this year, they were called pre-slugged, which had the information from the student information system pre-slugged on the test. But Don Odom's section A for math might be in this box, and somewhere in another 40 boxes, Don Odom's section B was. So our people spent literally hours and hours and hours doing it. So we sent the recommendation back to Mr. Yu and Mr. Blair again, that if you're going to do this, do what we used to do 40 years ago. And put all the tests together in one, and Don's tests are there together, you know, and do it. But, and she said they were looking at that. For me, I have a simplistic thing. Put it in the bid. Can you do it or not? I mean, I could deal with that one.
Right.
But we'll see.
I guess just the way I'm hearing the chatter going, it seems like she's going to be the next one to fall because this hasn't worked. And then,
Sort of was.
you know, we just keep starting over. And so it's just,
That discussion just triggered something. I was listening to the radio going home after a meeting, and lo and behold, they started talking about education, and they were saying now nationally, Tennessee was ranked #1 now as far as raising our expectations. And not only, a lot of states have raised expectations, but they had to follow too, and the students come up with them, but they said, however, in Tennessee that they had, which is very encouraging to hear. And so, you know, then I'm hearing this, you know,
Well, there's two different things. What you're talking about there, the expectation is the instructional standards. The problem is assessing those standards, how well the kids learn them. And Tennessee really has. Our standards now, one of the attempts with the testing services to align it to ACT questions, style questions. There's a lot of built-in writing in our test, which is not necessarily true in other places. You have tests where students have to complete the narrative. It's not do your math problem. It's why did you choose this answer over the others? And support your answer. Well, those have to be hand-scored generally too. So Tennessee's selecting to do this kind of test that has to be hand-scored with it was another complex issue in it. So the standards Tennessee has raised it, tried to align to ACT, expectations are up. Our system for assessing is the problem.
Well, they did say that the students also had been raised, where normally they didn't see that, where the expectations went up that much. So I was pleased to hear that end of it.
I
But-
think when you raise the bar, people do try to meet it.
Well, yeah,
You know.
you've got a point there. But one other thing I wanted to point out, reading the handouts last night, and I've seen that same handout year after year, and I think what we were around 8,600 per student that we put in, 86 something somewhere.
Yeah, total, that'd be federal,
Right,
state.
right, right.
643.
Right, and my point was, I remember the last time I counted, we were like 13th in the state as far as amounts paid. You know, as far as we were ranked, there were 12 other counties that paid or were paying more per student than we were. And if I looked at that one right,
Oh, it
last
is a lot
night,
more.
we were like 22nd.
Well, and see,
At
I
least
don't
on
have
that list.
143. I just picked certain ones.
Yeah, we didn't have them
Which school
all.
system are
I don't know,
130?
it's 143 or 100. See, Memphis broke up into the cities, Germantown and also. Is it 143 or 146?
We
I'm
were
not sure.
lower third
think
or something like
140.
that. Last time I remember that number, we were like
We were around
75th out of
115,
130 or
I
something
think
like
it's
that.
like in the hundreds, isn't it? where
But our
we
test
stand?
scores are top three.
Well,
That's
that's,
always been a bragging point that I used to tell the public. We're lower percentile on the amount of dollars and higher percentile, very high percentile. on
We get
test
more
scores.
bang for our buck.
Absolutely.
But I think you said, I think we heard it a couple of years ago, we were like 115th out of 136, and then Memphis split up like that. So, you know, we're the bottom 25% easily.
Well, we've been efficient, and you are efficient too. I mean, taxpayers for Rutherford County got two bodies, school boards, commission that's working for them and for the kids too.
Well, and you gave this a brief mention last night, but I highlighted it online, and that is the number of teachers per administrators.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
I mean, we blow everybody else out of the water, and I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't know if we're starving our system of administrators, or if we're just...
There does need to be more, but
Yeah.
when you're spending $1,300 less, my philosophy is gotta go to that teachers in the classroom that's got the kids most directly first. But some of that occurs simply because of the size of the school, the efficiency level there, versus in these Upper Cumberland, a lot of those smaller counties. You know, we got high schools larger than some school districts.
Right.
And so if they got 8 schools out there and they're putting a principal in each school, look what happens all of a sudden.
I mean, it's not even close. Like, you know,
It's
you've
not.
got, in Davidson County, they've got 6 administrators to 1 teacher.
This budget is causing them to make some reductions, I
Oh,
think.
yeah, you think so?
Up here.
It's
Yeah,
just,
the director of schools was his own personal driver too last time I remember that.
it's just crazy.
You get one of those, Mr. Spurlock?
Just do that in my contract.
I had trouble getting Mr. Clardy to drive me around.
I did have one more question tied to that. On your administrators, what goes in that calculation? Is that only AP and principals?
No, they do lump everybody. And in the report card, if you'll look, when they do an administrator count, central office people.
That's
other
my- yeah,
things
that was
too.
my question, is what
So
is-
what you see sometimes in the Knoxville and the Metro Nashville and Memphis City and all, that these huge complexes, central office complex and all these areas, so they're kind of dumped in that number.
So where do your, like, nurses, guidance counselors, all those kind of folks that aren't in the classroom, where do they go? What number?
It
what
doesn't come
category?
out on the state report card in any way that it's there. Well, I
But
mean,
no,
you
I'm
know,
saying, are they, when you do that ratio, is that in your teacher to administrator, or
not.
that's not even part of the
That would not be a
calculation?
part of that.
Okay.
Oh, well, she brought up something else. Why don't you, since this is on TV, live now, I guess, like the certified and why the state doesn't pay, well, you can't give the why, but the state doesn't pay all our certified teachers who are actually in the classrooms. Am I correct on that? Because, the way I understand part of it is because we can't cut kids in half or something like this and put them places.
When the state looks at it, and if give you a sheet that says, how many third graders do we have? Ratio is 1 to 20. Divide 20 into the bottom line number. But when you go apply that, A, B, C, D, school, 25 elementary schools, you apply that. Again, like I said last night, if you're at 19.4 to start with, and you go to anything above 20.49, you got to add a teacher. If that was 5 more students coming in, or if it was 20 more students coming in. We do not have a lot of reserve capacity would be the way to do that.
We talked about the example years ago. I think I talked to you about it in attendance even. You could theoretically, but you could theoretically, especially when we have more K-8 schools, you could have a family of 3 move in, and theoretically you could be close enough to add 3 teachers. In theory. No, it wouldn't happen, but
Right.
you could have one family require you to, if you could be close enough for two teachers.
Right.
Yeah.
But the other thing that's kind of a misnomer, you also, if you look at that chart, if you look at the pupils per teacher, we rank kind of at the state average. But why is that? Is because we have put these interventionists in, and because you have some special education teachers, because when they count that, they start counting anybody that's certified, kind of in that instructional number. So while the teacher in the high school may have 30 in that integrated one math classroom, you know, there also might be an AP class with 15 or 20. There's a CTE at 15 or something like that. Can't go over 20 average. So all of that kind of goes into that. So when you look at bottom numbers and don't look at application, it's very different. But we track that. We have to, because the fine's $55,000 to $65,000 for every oversized classroom. You can't do that. You got to pay attention.
Well, and another piece that is fairly minor in our administrator ratio is, and I saw an obituary today for a man who had his
You don't have to pay
doctorate.
them to retire.
Well, a certified teacher who was over the transportation in his county. We use classified person for that. So when we're doing our state reporting through the PEERS system, it would not show up. But in some other systems, they tend, where we've gone to classified, they may have certified, who were there by virtue of certified positions.
Well, and before we go much further too, I just have to commend you, Mr. Sandby, for the level of information and detail and transparency that you've given us. I left the meeting last night knowing that we'd celebrated Mr. Clardy and we'd celebrated Mr. Odom, and we didn't celebrate Mr. Sandby because he's staying.
Celebrating today because today's his birthday.
I know, we didn't, I told him that. I wouldn't have had him sing to him last night if I'd realized that. But I just want to make sure that you know how much this commission
Thank you. I
appreciates you
appreciate that.
and recognizes what a talent and a resource and a contribution that you make to this county. So I just want to make sure you know that.
I appreciate it.
In the future, one of the most misunderstood things, and you'll have to try to help the public help us understanding, is this per pupil cost per school.
Oh, yes.
When you go to a place maybe like Holloway, where your classes size are smaller, and you're getting kids through, or don't make it any other way. You're graduating, or you're having, or if you're in a school that's having to do lots of interventions, where you've had to put extra resources in that, it's going to show a higher cost. It's going to be misleading to the public trying to understand, well, why is my school not getting this much or the other? And if you'll look at this little demographic here, Rutherford County has changed. And if you'll look at how many of each one and how much more, and as that change is occurring to stay where you were academically, is taking more people to help those students catch up.
And I have a plan in mind for a resource that we will use to expand hours. We'll have the state, but we'll allow the parents and the public members of the public who are interested to go in and drill down and see what we'll still get questions, but maybe can answer some of those items that will be hidden in the composite numbers. That's the advantage of being in the pilot program. You get to see how your numbers look.
Mr. Shepard? Mr. Shepard?
Well, I'll make a motion. We never did do that, did we?
Not yet.
Yeah, okay. I make a motion that the Budget Committee approves $387,705,790 for the next year of general purpose school budget.
Thank you, Commissioner Shaker.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Allen. Any further questions or discussion? I give everybody a second because it's a big number. If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We'll move down to the general purpose school fund budget amendments. We did start the meeting last night. And we can take the first or
Take them off.
So if you want to just read the recommended motion, because we all heard the explanation last night. Just keep reading them until somebody stops you.
It's A through E. Okay, the first one was the medical and life insurance. The recommended motion to is amend $321,379 in already budgeted medical and life insurance expenditures to the line items where funding is needed due to staff changes and changes made during the open enrollment as presented. The certified staff, their recommended motion is to amend $630,390 in already budgeted certified staff and related $97,490 in payroll benefits for a total of $727,880 to the line items where funding is needed due to staff changes since the 2017-18 budget was approved as presented. The other one is classified staff and special education teachers, and that motion is to amend $295,219 classified and certified budgeted pay and benefits with $280,555 in salaries and wages and the related $14,664 in benefits as presented. And D is the substitute teacher line item. The recommended motion is to amend $307,000 in already budgeted and certified and non-certified substitute teacher pay to the major functions and the line items as presented. The technology part of this one is a recommend motion to amend $413,000 in already budgeted technology expenditures as presented. And then the transfer of non-labor items to other, is he as far as I need to go on this one?
That's as far as you can.
Far I need to go on this one right now? Or you tell me. Do I need to go on that?
No, I mean, some of these we didn't hear last night.
We can go through, yeah, we went through all of
This
these.
may just be a board function here.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
F
F is
may
just
just
the
be a
board.
Yeah, I
board
think
function.
F we decided last
Yeah,
night.
it just was the first.
Yeah, I think so. I think the rest of them are
It was
just.
Transfers, we normally.
I'm sorry, I changed on the version from numbers to letters, clarified my outline and confused everyone.
I think we still do, even though it's within, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
We
Approved
do.
here,
Yeah.
they don't go to commission, but they
Right.
are approved by.
They approved
Oh,
here.
okay,
Bobby
okay.
Gadry.
Even though it wasn't approved by Health and Ed.
We can take-
They heard it, I mean, they had a chance to object or
Well,
speak
if
up.
there's a question, we can push it through tonight, just make sure we're doing.
Okay. So we're looking at E, which would be your technology. And this was, again, to try for those high school computers based on subjects. And that's the purpose of this, of course. To amend $413,000 in already budgeted technology expenditures as presented. And F would be transfer of non-labor items to other non-labor items in the same major category. The motion there is to amend $2,067,416 in already budgeted non-labor items to other non-labor expenditures within the same major functions as presented. And G is revenues, fund balance items, and other items. And there was two motions, I think, with that one. The first recommended motion is to amend an additional net revenues of $4,155,074, decrease the unassigned fund balance by $78,526 for prior year donations, increase line item 71,200 through 312, the special ed contracts and other agencies by $93,451, increase expenditures related to the current year and prior year grants and donations by $140,149, and other revenue expenditure changes as presented. The second motion is to increase unassigned fund balance by $1,500,000 for the net growth in local property taxes to increase the amount for line item 34,655, Committee for Education by $2,500,000 to be used for opening cost of Rockville High in 2019-20. Increase account 34,655, Committee to Education by $336,048 for the Blackman High Wrestling Building, and to decrease the amount 76,100-399 Capital Outlay Contract Services by the $336,048 as presented.
Yeah, I think that's a total of 8 recommended motions.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Allen. Commissioner Jernigan, any questions on any portion of that? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Got down to review any budgets as necessary. Does anybody want to take, we don't need to review the school budget, can we just do that? So we'll say we appreciate you both being here. Appreciate everything you do. We all said nice things about you last night.
Yeah, don't give it a big head.
Ms. Nolan.
All right. I tried to correct these slight corrections, but still. No tab.
No tab.
Okay. Just go on.
Do we have one more, please?
I've got it here. Okay, so in working with the assessor, and I think all the documentation may have been headed to the mayor's office today for his signature, the certified tax rate that will be sent to the state is $2 and almost 10 cents. So at the very last column, previously reported, these were the numbers that we were using with the assessments that the assessor provided me and the tax rate. You can see to the left of that column what the estimate for current property tax will be for each fund. So total available at the bottom, you can see, it's after what we give to the city and after the estimate for delinquency, we're estimating $175,243,000. Previously, we were computing $175,008,000. So there's a little bit less increases, and you'll see that as we go through some of these. So the next page, and I tried to correct those to get the correct number for the school appropriation of $387,705,790. These are all the funds, and I guess I'm showing you this one first, and we can go to each of the other ones to show you what I adjusted. And really, on the other summary sheets, I adjusted that increase for the certified rate. Small differences. Also show here, as we move on, in June, we'll adjust revenues. We'll complete that category and hopefully have improvements on our ending fund balance, our estimated beginning. So as presented, all the funds, and note that we've got the revenue adjustments. Revenues are under appropriations for all funds by $27.3 million. Now I'll just compare that to where we adopted the budget in the current year. Our original, going into the 17-18 year, we were going into fund balance almost 16 million. So I just want you to see how much more we are going in. Now hopefully, It'll go, you know, the ending fund balances will be better, but we're still going in with our revenues under appropriations by 27.3. With schools, and I just, if you don't mind going back to this sheet that I gave you earlier. And all I'm doing are throwing warning shots out there, okay? So I just want you to see, you know, and
Tonight,
this is the one I gave you tonight that I said, well, the number's wrong. It's this one, the front sheet is 141. Well, I'll tell you what, you can go to that
Tab 11.
tab 11. That, tab 11 will be fine too, because what I want
That's the
What I want to show you is
but that's the one moving.
how much we went into fund balance going into the year with schools is 6.7 million. Now the school board, you know, we added more through the year, but what we added was taking money that was available in fund balance and moving it into capital projects to help fund schools that we don't have to borrow. You know, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. That was fine, but I'm just saying I'm really comparing that we're adopting a budget going into next year over 15 million. Well, close to 15 million with this adjustment using fund balance. As presented, it meets the state policy of fund balance being at least 3%. Actually, all the funds meet all the commission's policies.
One thing I learned from my years up here is I've had to learn about government accounting. You budget for the worst possible case, where you're going to spend every penny and have the minimum amount of income, and it never is that. My first couple of years up there, I had severe heartburn about balancing budgets that were in deficits, but they always came out much better than budgeted projections are, because you're budgeting worst case scenarios. Well, within policy on every single budget.
With worst case scenario.
With worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario. And I guess my little bit of heartburn, you know, is seeing how much we went into this year, how much are we going into next year, what will happen the next year. Now, I do realize that we've got five, you know, based on what you approved tonight and last year, is it $5 million now that will be sitting in a committed fund balance that will be available next year to help fund the opening of the school. So.
The only way to alleviate your heartburn is basically with a tax increase.
I know.
Is it not?
Yes,
And all of a
but
sudden,
I know I'm not the one that has to.
we've all got heartburn, and all their constituents have got heartburn.
I know, but I feel like I don't do my job unless I bring this forward.
Personally, I don't think the will of the commission, any part of the commission, is to have a tax increase if it's not absolutely necessary.
Especially if we're in policy.
Yeah,
You're
and
within your
especially if we're
policy.
within policy on every budget.
Doesn't it scare the heck out of you though when the rate's going to drop from 268 to 210? You say, how accurate is that? You don't find out
Oh,
until it's
sure.
too late.
You know, and some things you don't know, you know, what, is it a concern? It's like, well, you know, it takes a while to get through, you know that. It takes a while to get to the process of what's going to all shake out, and we're not going to know that until next year, end of next year, maybe the year after that. So, but anyway, that's the end of the story. If you want to flip through, just so you can see on the general fund, I think y'all wanted to look at that. And so what I've provided you is what, all the things that we've changed. Revenue beyond the adjustment for the certified rate of $57,279. I adjusted the state health revenue. I decreased it by $32,564. That was to offset the change that we had down below for the health department. But I thought it was interesting that we started out with a mayor recommendation of $102,772,250. All our pluses and minuses, we end up with your recommendation at this point, $102,772,220. Really close. It's pretty much close. So we are with this, and again, I know this will end up better because we've not adjusted revenues in the general fund, and we haven't estimated what's not going to be spent. So I feel pretty good about the general fund.
While we're talking about the general fund, there's one thing that this committee hasn't really had the opportunity to consider, and that's information that came out of a safety meeting that occurred several weeks ago. But several commissioners on this committee were there, Commissioner Allen, Commissioner Schaefer, maybe some others that I just don't remember. And we discussed a number of initiatives that we could take as a county government in order to make our schools safer. And some of these were discussed in private, and so I'm not going to reveal too much information, but one of them involved the general fund. Most of the rest of them involved the school board and the school board's budget to fund them. And that was the possible need to have a couple of substitute SROs. And I can go into more detail if I need to on why that would be the case. Again, I don't want to provide too many details because some of this I think was shared in the private meeting. But that would be something that would work through the general fund if a couple of substitute SROs were funded, because that would go through the sheriff's department. I guess just in a nutshell, the rationale was you've got these SROs at the schools. They're there to keep the schools safe. But if you have a staff of however many of them there are, what are the odds that one is going to be out one day due to sickness or family member needing something? I mean, if you take a staff of any number at all, you're going to have some people out every day due to these different causes of absenteeism. And so what was discussed was having a couple of substitute SROs on staff so that they could sub in when an SRO is out. And if you happen to have a day when no SRO is out, they actually could be stationed at a couple of other locations in need. Now, this would be something that would cost a little bit more money, but we haven't discussed it in these budget hearings, although Commissioner Allen and Commissioner Schaefer and maybe some others heard those discussions in this meeting where we were there with the school board and Director Odom and others. So I thought I would at least raise that issue because we spent a lot of time that evening talking about things we could do to make schools safer. That's got to be a top priority for every commissioner, or one of the top priorities. So maybe we should spend just a moment talking about that. And since we're talking about the general fund, this one initiative that I'm referring to about these substitute SROs would come out of that fund.
Is there enough time for that to go through public safety and make its way back before we set the tax rate? Because that's something that I would think more than 4 commissioners on budget ought to have a chance to weigh in on. I mean, we've got till the end of June.
Well,
When we set the tax rate, when does public safety meet again?
Monday night.
Well,
Tuesday, I guess. Tuesday.
Could we bring that up there,
Put it
come
in.
back to our next rate, because we can plug this in. That's not a substantial, I support the recommendation, and it's not a substantial enough number to change our publication for the advertised tax rate and things like that, and we could plug that in all the way up to the 11th hour and give it a chance to go through the
Committee.
public safety, and go through the committee process and come back to us and address at that point in time.
I agree with both things you said. Number one, it does need to go through these committees. And number two, I don't think, even if a few substitute SROs were deemed to be necessary and were funded, I don't think it would change our
Yeah, that wouldn't be a material change on-
I don't think it
our
would
tax
either.
rate. I mean,
Such as our
I don't think
publication.
it'll adjust your tax rate. I think
I
it'll
don't
still
think
be
it
within
would.
policy.
I think we would be in policy.
Yeah.
And Commissioner Allen and Commissioner Schaefer, is that kind of your sense too, that this is something that should be discussed?
Yes, and I'm incredibly grateful that you thought to bring that up. Absolutely, yes.
We've got that. I would hope we go through the process. Commissioner Allen had brought up last week, these days are running together to me about possible some inequities with department heads' pay. We said we would look at. I would hope that Mayor Burgess, Ms. Nolan, and Ms. Sonia Stevenson, drove blank, known her my whole life, would come back with a recommendation to us by at least our next schedule budget meeting or sometime in time to consider taking action on that in this budget.
If
Is
there's
that-
if there's a recommendation.
If there's a recommendation.
The review has been completed, and she has found no disparities that are noteworthy.
She sent me a lot of information. I've just not had time to go through all of it yet. So, but yeah, if I see anything that I think significant, then I'll schedule time with you and we can
Okay.
talk about it. And then we would bring it back if there's a recommendation.
Which segues into a point I was mentioning to some before we started this meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled for next Thursday, May 31st, and the entirety of that meeting is to review the budgets and make a recommendation for publication. Without a proposed tax increase, without what I hear is any recommendation to move any pennies from one fund to the other, and with no other major changes proposed, one member would recommend we approve the publication tonight and then cancel next Thursday's meeting. I don't mind coming one little bit, but we're spending taxpayer dollars every time we come in here, if nothing else, just to pay our per diem, and also dragging staff in and everything else. So if it's the will of the committee, would the committee entertain that? And if so, is there a motion to approve the publication tonight and cancel next Thursday's meeting?
I'll make a motion that we do that, but
Thank
where are
you.
we going to publish it though?
Well, what I would recommend is do the same thing that we do, is Mark determine what is the rate, and we can have our purchasing agent make the decision.
Okay. I'll make the motion then.
Got that motion by Commissioner Schaefer. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Allen? Mr. Mayor?
One question. Something has come up today that might need discussion about one particular individual's pay, not anything to do with what Ms. Allen had talked about. Is there any opportunity, once we publish this, for
Oh, gosh, yes.
a small minor change that
Yes.
that might need to be considered?
I think anything besides, we wouldn't want to come back and change the tax rate.
No, no.
No, I don't,
No,
But if
no,
there's
it
a
would
minor
it'd be a nominal
line
amount of
item
money, but
change, I think that's well within reason to do
Okay.
after the
I think
budget.
most important to me, that is important about this meeting, is whether or not you are going to do something other than the certified rate.
okay.
That's the important thing. You
If
know,
we-
whether you add a little more or whatever, as long as you're still within policy, you're not doing something crazy at the end. It's just some adjustments. We typically have that.
When we meet June 7th, we can look at anything
Okay.
that anybody decides to look at, and that'll still be ahead of the public hearing.
Plus, after the public hearing, even if nobody speaks, we have to have one the next night to review it from the standpoint, and then, because you never know if anybody's coming or not, so you don't have the time to cancel it. So we've got that, we're talking up to, the 17th, 18th of June, whenever that is, that one is, so we can change it up there, we can change it on the floor if we have to.
Yeah, we have June 7th and also June
June,
13th.
you got June, yeah, and June, a regular June meeting.
Mhm, yeah, that's
I had
what
the
you-
opportunities, it might be, and I already know that I need to get with, I need to probably, most likely, I need to sit with the assessor and get the people in the right budget. I know we've got the total numbers, but to get the people in the right budget. So there might be just some movement from assessor to reappraisal. I know I haven't got that yet to do.
Will the appeals process impact your numbers?
No, the appeals,
Right.
no.
There won't be time enough to do that, will there?
No, I don't think it will
It
change my
might affect our
number.
collections.
Yeah, it'll affect our collections, which, you know, the county accounting for taxes is different from cities. They budget in how much they have to refund. You know, it's gonna be in our fund balance if there's, either we won't collect, but like I said, you know, we're budgeting collections at 95.5, and this is, trustee is 97 plus. So I feel like we've got a little cushion there. So,
We got a motion and a second on the canceling of the May 31st meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Brings up my next question. Do we have to have the meeting after the public hearing if nobody at all shows up to speak? Could we set a policy tonight that nobody shows up to speak, that meeting not take place, and publicize that? I'm just wondering. That's more taxpayer dollars paying us. In the last 3 years, I don't think anybody has spoken, which is very frustrating. I wish people would show up. I'd rather them get up and say things I don't like, says nobody's showing up at all. We're voting on a $500 million budget and people aren't showing up. But it is frustrating to come in here and have nothing to talk about and pay staff and pay us to show up. I mean, Mr. Mayor, do you have a recommendation on that?
Is there anything other than just our policy that governs that? Is that anything we need to ask Josh about? I don't know.
think so.
Well, I understand and I agree with everything you said. However, the night of the public hearing, what we've typically done is if we don't have comments, we could cancel it then, and we still have the option of doing it. So, I mean, on that one, I would just
Can we
say,
cancel that meeting at that 11th hour? Is my next, is a
I would
question.
think that we could,
See,
but
That hearing, what's the,
During
the night of the
hearing,
public
night of the
hearing,
public
and
hearing.
then
after it's over.
What is the next
very
meeting?
The next night.
the
The
next
next
night.
night, yeah.
I don't know, that could be problematic. I'd like to get an opinion on that.
You can get an opinion between now and the next budget
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah, we'd still have time to
Yeah. Yeah.
be.
I don't mind coming up here a bit, but, you know, it's,
And I agree with you, but, you know, if something's there, I hate to cancel that day and then, you know, we're scrambling to,
you can
Or
find out
somebody-
between now and that June 7th meeting so we would know a week in advance what our options are.
Okay.
Is there any other business coming for us tonight?
Yeah, well, yes, could I just go through one,
Oh, I'm
just,
sorry, did I cut you off before you got through with that?
Yeah, I just want,
Yeah.
it won't take me long. For the ambulance fund, we added 10,181 to the revenue. Highway, we added 5,364. Debt service, we added 56,303 to the revenue. Yeah, I just wanted to go over those revenues, and so I will use these numbers to do publication.
Fish fries or anything this weekend? Everybody has a good Memorial Day weekend, and we are adjourned. Thank you.